Okay everybody, I'm back again with another video here on using the RRtrack program to kind of get my camera set a little bit better here so you can see the whole screen. I've had some questions about how to do a few things. I want to start with a situation like this. I've got an 072 switch here, and we got 072 curves coming around here to form a 90-degree curve. But we've also got 072 curves in here, which also forms a 90-degree curve. But look at the gap between these two tracks. That gap happens to be 14.65 inches. In other words, the length of the straight leg of the switch. And, some people will sit back and say, well, let's just take, this much here and, oops, what am I doing wrong here? And just add a straight in here and do it that way. Yes, you can do that. But it still leaves a lot of gap in between here. There's a much better way of doing the same thing. And that would be to just simply, because there's no rule that just because you want 072 curves, there's no rule that says you have to use an 072 switch. Okay? So because of ROS and the massive variety of switches that they offer, let's use a number 4 switch instead. Okay? So now we want to duplicate these curves because we want to use these curves over here as well. I'm going to move this out of the way for the moment. This is rather straightforward. Okay, there's my 90-degree curve. But because this only curves 14 degrees, and this versus 20, this curves 22.5, I need to make up the difference. So all I need to do is just add a custom cut curve of an 072 at 8.5 degrees. Add that curve into there. Now, I don't have any straight in between here, but look at how much I've just reduced the spacing in here. Right now, my spacing, my center-to-center spacing on those tracks is 9.21 inches, as you can see here in the upper right-hand corner. Okay? And that might be fine. That might be all you need. Okay? But what if you'd like to have it even closer? What if you'd like that to be 5 inches? Okay, well, let's take and duplicate this whole thing again and put it over here. Alright, but now let's take and add a straight in between there. Now we know we had 9.21 inches before. Now if I use my calculator, I can take my 9.21 minus, let's say I want 5-inch spacing up there. So I'm going to enter 4.21, which is 5 inches smaller than the 9.21. And I'm going to divide that by the angle. Well, what's the angle? The sine of the angle. Well, the angle is going to be this curve minus, the 90-degree curve minus the 14 degrees here. Okay? So we're going to divide this by 76. The sine of 76, hit equals, and we come up with 4.339, let's say. Okay? So now we want a cut straight of 4.339. And we're going to put that in between right there. Now, yeah, that's the same thing as adding a straight in here, but at least I'm not adding as long of a straight. I've made it much shorter. But now I've got 5 inches out here. And I can verify that by using the measuring tool, and it shows right up here that my vertical dimension is exactly 5 inches. Okay. Another situation I've come across also is, how do you do parallel sidings? Okay. Well, again, let's start with, say, a number 4 switch. And I'm going to place that right here. And I'm just going to add on some straight track onto the straight leg of that switch. And so now we've got that part. But now here's the switch that's going to go into our siding. But now I want the center to center spacing to be, let's say, 5 inches. This is where the grid dots, if I was to zoom in on this, this is where the grid dots, or the snap function of the program, comes in very handy. I think you can see it on the camera here. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to even tell. I know I can see it on the computer screen. But each one of these dots represents 2 inches. But in between, you'll notice that this track jumps from one position to another. That's because I have, down at the bottom of the screen, I have the snap function set at 1 inches, which is what have always mentioned many times in my previous videos, that you should have that. Typically, you always want that set at 1 inch. Well, since this switch curves at 14 degrees, that means we need to curve back the other way the same amount by 14 degrees. But let's say you want to use a specific radius of a curve. Okay? So I'm going to make a cut stock curve of an 072, and I want 14 degrees. Okay? Now if I would attach that right there, I can obviously see that that's not, 5-inch spacing there. This doesn't even come close to lining up where this is. So it's like, how do you know how much to add in between here in order to get my 5-inch spacing? Well, let's do things in a little bit of reverse. Okay? Let me move this over a little bit. Let's attach my curve to this straight. I know that this straight, I've got it set at 5-inch center to center spacing. I know I've got the correct curve because I made it 14 degrees. All I need to do now is measure from here to here. Now it's not perfectly lined up. It's offset by 1.32 inches. Okay? That's the part you can't see up on the screen here on the right side. It's offset by 1.32 inches. So in order to determine or to get this end to line up with the switch, again, we're going to use the same formula. We're going to take our 1.32 inches, that's our amount of offset, and we're going to divide it by the angle. The angle in this case is 14 degrees, obviously. So we're going to take 14 degrees, the sine of 14 degrees, say equals. Now I've come up with an answer of 5.456. Okay? So I want a cut straight of 5.456. But now where do I want to put that? I want to put that in between this curve and this straight. So now I want to take this and move that down to there. Add this into here. Now if I use the measuring tool, which I've demonstrated many times before on how to use it, and I measure that, I can see I've got 0, 0, 0. It's in perfect alignment, and the distance is 7.97. So I can just say cut straight. It automatically has it in there. Just say that's what I want and fill it in. Now I don't need this straight here anymore, because I was just using it as like a tool. So I could just get rid of that, and there's my perfect siding that's at an exact 5-inch center-to-center spacing. You can use this same process for whatever spacing you want in between here. Okay? You just need to make sure that when you've got this part here, that it's not lined up there, so you know you need to put it in between. But if you happen to be this way, then that means you need to move this out of the way, add your straight in between here, and then reattach this, then delete that straight so that you can move this back to reconnect it, which would bring you back to right there. But that's how you do that. So hopefully this has helped a lot of people, and good luck and have fun. Any questions, please feel free to message me.